Hey guys, I'm fixing the lighting and unfortunately trying something new. There we go. So I'm super casual today. Please don't judge. If you're new here, hi, welcome. My name is Jen. If you're looking for posh and pomp and circumstance, this is probably not the channel for you. But if you're looking to research and take a deeper look or a deeper dive into the fringe of all topics that are highly strange and or spiritual, then you're in the right place. So we looked at this already, but since we were talking about Twin Peaks and David Lynch had talked about in some of his interviews the Eastern philosophy, and now we see also, even though Philip K. Dick was I think a Presbyterian, we read, and he had a pastor and all that, he was kind of like some of us. He researched other faiths and religions. We do that here. We're not afraid of other faith systems, religions, people, things that are different here. We try to take a look at things and people and groups and situations and events from a couple of different perspectives and force ourselves to look at things from another point of view. So that's kind of what we try to do here, what I try to promote. And so we've seen a little bit with also Philip K. Dick and now with David Lynch and Frost, that they're all putting some of this Eastern philosophy into their writings. Now, something that really fascinates me is this, and the reason that I'm going, I guess I'll do this at the beginning instead of the end or middle. The reason that I'm going over this topic is because in these times that we're in, I do feel like, well, always we're told that words carry the power of life or death. And I feel in these times especially, it's highly possible, and I think probable, just based on how people are acting and reacting to things, that those in power or control are getting us to use our own words, minds, our own thoughts kind of against ourselves. Are we creating our own situations? Are we repeating history because we're thinking about it and dwelling on it, so we end up repeating it? This is kind of the root of these thought forms. It's about focus and concentration and kind of creating a golem out of that. So we're going to kind of look at that because I do believe it relates to situations and events that we're seeing play out today. For example, for the mainstream media to be putting out Bible verses and to be promoting the Bible as much as they are, that's strange to me, and it should be strange to you as well. Certain channels that are not, godly, that are not into Christ or God, are promoting, that these are the end times. So again, are we repeating situations and scenarios and events because our minds are focused on them, and we are being, our own energy is being harnessed against us? And that's kind of the idea where thought forms and egregores come from. So I have a couple of things pulled up to read to you or read with you. I will post links in the comment section when I am done with this video. As soon as I'm done, we might not look at all things or a whole book, but we will touch base on it. That way, if you want to go and do your own research or read the book on your own, you can. We kind of try to do that too, and we go where the Spirit leads. So again, I do believe this has something to do with current events as well, because a lot of the people who are in higher positions in our country have a belief in reincarnation and Hinduism and Buddhism. So we're going to take a look at where that started again. But now I have a couple of different sources that have more information. So I will go ahead and read that to you right now. I'm actually on an order website, and I love the order stuff, especially when we're doing research. Hi guys. I need my glasses right now to read that, but I can't read that with my glasses because I don't need them for close up. So have fun in the chat. Be respectful, please. Don't be hateful, or I will just block you. And maybe I might not need them at all. Let me see. I might not need them. Okay, so this is from a website called anomalyinfo.com, and it's everything anomalous. It says anomalies, curiosities, mysteries, legends, chronology, and illustrations. But I put it up after some research or some searching, you know, trying a couple different searches, because I wanted to know, I wanted to prove out my theory. If those in control and power are trying to harness our own energy and get us to create this situation with our own energy, you know, to manifest, as they say, if they're trying to get us to manifest a situation with our own energy to be used against us, scientifically speaking, has that ever been looked at before? Has anyone ever experimented with the mind in that way? Because we know they've done a lot of experimentation with things like MK Ultra and Project Paperclip. We've had a lot of societal experimentation taking place in our society, especially on American citizens, since the dawn of America. Well, so, you know, sadly, since the dawn of men creating tools and harming each other. But here we go. This is an older website. Now we're going to look at the person who coined the term thought form from one of these older religions. And again, I am a Christ follower. I know I have a lot of Christ followers that watch the channel, but I am not afraid to look at other belief systems and other religions, especially, again, because this is something that those who are in higher positions in the country, this is something that they believe in. So I want to take a look at it and understand, you know, how they operate a little better. So my own energy, so I can stop this, so I can prevent it. Kind of like in the Nightmare on Elm Street when Nancy turns her back on Freddy. That's what we need to do, I think. We are focusing too much on our problems when we need to be solution-centered. And I think it's harmful because, again, if we're focusing constantly, if we're studying things like World War II, and we are always looking at war and we are always hearing about war, it's just going to exacerbate the situation by constantly focusing on it. So again, balance is key. This is a point where sometimes too much awareness is not a good thing. So I'm going to go ahead and read from this anomalous website about the person who first coined the term thought forms. They're also called tulpas. Now, we will get into the definitions, but we actually did that in a previous video. In this video, we're taking kind of a deeper look. And I also pulled up a couple of searches because the overall summary that I got was interesting. I did a search because, again, can I scientifically prove out my theory? Well, I did a search and I said, have there been any studies on creating thought forms or tulpas? This is what Google AI told me. It says, yes, there have been several academic studies and psychological research on the modern secular practice of creating tulpas, often called tulpamancy, so like necromancy. This is called tulpamancy, and again, get the idea of it's kind of like a golem or a spiritual golem. And saints have been known to do, they call bilocation. They are in one place like praying for somebody, but they can't be with that person, but they are so focused on that person and so much like a state of prayer for that person that this other doppelganger type thing appears to this person, you know, across the world. So we've seen things like this occur that we can't always explain. But my question is this, scientifically speaking, can we repeat it? And it looks like there were studies done on it as well. So we're going to look at that too. Okay? All right. So it says, yes, there have been several academic studies on creating them. It says demographics and motivations. The online tulpa community online is primarily composed, and again, digital information and how it's entered and binary systems have a lot to do, and I know this is going to sound weird, in quantum computing have a lot to do with how things kind of go awry in our reality. So these things do affect us. People don't understand, you know, we are electric beings, and having these devices around all the time and all of these different signals and wavelengths can have a physical effect on us. So demographics and motivation. The online tulpa community is primarily composed of imaginative, articulate adolescents and young adults who often report experiencing social anxiety or loneliness. The main motivation for creating a tulpa is to find a close, constant companion. That's And that's kind of horrifying to hear that laid out like that. But we've seen, if you are online at all, you've seen how the youth is affected by, challenges and these things trending and going viral, and not having enough sense apparently, that they're participating in things that are or could be harmful for them. So I've never been to jail, ever. I'm kind of in my jammies, so if that's why you're like judging, shame on you. I have my Curious George shirt on. He does not have a tail on this shirt. Which is weird. I had a very strange Mandela, and now I can't even remember what it was, today. And I was going to do like a short video about it, but now I can't remember what it was. Let me grab a sip of my drink. Now, another way to look at this would also be, in my generation, Gen X, would be poltergeists. Young adolescents, people, young girls especially, who are going through, well, Carrie was all about it. She was at that point where she was starting to turn into a woman, and teens have all these hormones running through them, and sometimes what can happen is that comes out in ways that you can't see with your eyes, but you see the effects of it, and it ends up being poltergeist activity. But when that person resolves whatever issues going on in their life, whether their parents are getting a divorce or they're struggling in school, or what have you, or that person grows up a little bit, that usually subsides and it will greatly decrease. So poltergeist is also allegedly things that we create with our minds. So I would also wonder, Ouija boards and things like that, are people even actually touching base with alleged demons or spirits, some people believe, or is it something they're connecting to in their own mental drive? Because my mom used to want to get lottery numbers from me on the Ouija board, and I said no, I wouldn't do that. But she only wanted to do it with me, see? Because she already knew I had these precognitive dreams occurring. So anyway, a poltergeist is also another thing they say that is created by the power of our own thoughts. Think about that for a minute, And with everybody focused on, the political upheaval in our country, is that going to increase and exacerbate these behaviors that we don't want to see? So, mental health implications. It says studies have found that while a high percentage of tulpamancers, people who try to create these things intentionally, have pre-existing diagnoses of mental or neurodevelopment disorders, such as depression, anxiety, or autism. I'm not a doctor. My disclaimer is in the description box. This is the answer we received. They overwhelmingly report that the practice has led them to perceived improvements in their mental health and quality of life, which is odd, right? Because basically what they're doing is creating their own doppelganger or golem or demon, if you will. Experienced autonomy. Practitioners report that with time and practice, their tulpas come to feel like autonomous agents with their own free will and opinions, distinct from the host's conscious thoughts. They are experienced through various sensory modalities, including auditory, visual, and somatic, which is touch, hallucinations, which become more real with experience. Neurocognitive mechanisms. Researchers such as Professor Samuel Vissier, another French doctor, have conducted ethnographic studies and are exploring the brain mechanisms involved in ongoing multi-methods project. An MRI study is in the works to investigate the neural correlates and determine if a classifier can discriminate between tulpa-controlled thoughts and the host's own thoughts. So basically, they want to see what's making this occur in the brain. So they have done actual scientific studies on this. It says, comparison to other phenomenon. Researchers draw parallels between the mental techniques used to create a tulpa and practices in other areas, such as developing relationships with spiritual beings through prayer or cultivating empathy through reading fiction. And again, to continue from our previous videos, is this where we get our boogeymen? Are we, basically I'm asking, my question here is, are we breathing life into our own urban legends and demons, if you will? Because we also have seen these terms connected to the Watchers and or the fallen angels. So what is that trying to say? Either the definition used to be different, or they're saying that they're fictitious and we created them through our own belief in them. And we know that if you believe, if you believe, that you will receive when you ask for a thing. So this is the same idea as far as manifesting goes. I'm not saying I believe in it or I'm going to try it or any of that. I'm looking at it because I know there are people in high places who do believe in this, and I want to know what's going on with it and what drives them and motivates them, because there seems to be a severe lack of empathy in our society all around at every level. Just look at the comment sections in some of the videos. Have you ever read it? You know how difficult it is to like go back, transliterate, go through historical documents. Everybody knows Hitchens by now, and have you seen him currently? He's backpedaling. A lot of the atheists are. He's really backpedaling on a lot of the things that he used to say. So anyways, moving on. I'm going to pull up another question that I asked, and then we'll go to the link with the longer information. Now, this is interesting because this is what I asked, and I'm asking this with the thought in mind, with current events the way that they are. Are they showing us more bad news? Are they showing us more images of war to get our thoughts on that and to bring it into reality, to make it happen? All right. And again, that there have been scientific studies on these things. So I don't know who you're talking about, but goodbye. Okay, so this is what I asked. I asked, what I typed into Google was, can a tulpa, egregore, or a thought form be created accidentally? So again, with the thought in mind, are the people in power wanting to use our own energy to make certain things happen in our reality, in our world? And this says, yes, both tulpas, individual thought forms, and egregores, group thought forms. So a tulpa is something a person, a practitioner of the occult, would try to create on their own, of their own willpower, of their own mental strength or fortitude. And an egregore, is a group thought form. It's something that comes to be, that comes to fruition because people think of it. Again, I will point back to Bill Murray at the end, or towards the end of Ghostbusters, when they're like, don't think of anything, don't think of anything, don't think of anything. And they're like, Ray, what did you think of? And he's like, I thought of the sweetest, cuddliest thing I could, because they created it with their mind. Whatever they were afraid of, she said, they were going to bring to happen. It was going to come to happen. So again, these are things, and there are clues about all of this in these movies and shows, and that's why we're looking at Twin Peaks, and that's why we continue to go back to Philip K. Dick's stories. I actually had a thing happen with Running Man that I've not seen anyone else, not Running Man, Blade Runner, I've not seen anyone else talk about, so I'm going to talk about that either at the end of this video or just in another video. So with the idea, are those in power wanting to use our own energy and our own thoughts against us? Can a tulpa or an egregore be created accidentally? And it says yes. They can form accidentally or unintentionally, especially through intense, prolonged focus or collective belief. So things can be brought into fruition just by us focusing on it and talking about it more and more. And can you imagine a video or a book that the whole nation or the whole world has read, even like the Bible, over and over and over again, and everybody's focused on what? On the apocalypse, on Armageddon, which is war, right? So if you're always focused on this, you're going to always be having that same problem occur again and again, because that's where you're giving your energy. I hope this makes sense. I'm trying to say this in a variety of different ways so people will understand. And I know to a lot of people this sounds like hogwash and magic or what have you. But these are, again, I'm just a little channel. There are authors, there are writers, and that's what we're talking about too. Philip K. Dick and David Lynch and Dean Koontz. Are they modern day prophets? Because we have a lot of their works coming to reality in the background here. So what's happening with that? We saw that at the end of 2019 with CV and the lockdowns. That was just like one of his books. And so are those in power using scripts against us? Are they just putting fictitious scripts into our news media to fill our news media? Or is it something deeper? Are we creating these things with our constant focus and thought? Let's say Jesus wasn't real, but everybody's always thinking about him and talking about him, and suddenly he is real because everybody's made him real at this point. Again, just like Bill Murray at the end of Ghostbusters, where they brought to life the marshmallow guy. Okay, so it says, yes, these things can be formed accidentally, meaning if somebody, let's say somebody knew, and I have personal experience with this, so you don't have to believe me, but it does exist. Let's say somebody knew that you had a gift, right? That you had some gift that most people aren't tapped into. I believe, we're all receivers. Any of us can learn to do certain things or whatever. But anyway, let's say you didn't know that you had a certain gift, but somebody else does. They know that your thoughts are powerful. They know that your words are powerful. Let's say they manipulate you to start saying and thinking and doing and focusing on something just by subliminally dropping a couple of words here and there, a couple of Easter eggs throughout your day and your conversations. That's what I'm talking about here, is those in power showing certain things on the media and on the news constantly, consistently, getting us to focus on these things and exacerbate them, increase them in our world. Are you the key master? Yeah, right? Bye. All right, so in keeping with that, can these things be formed accidentally, or can your energy be used against you? Tulpas, the individual ones, it says through sustained imagination. So let's say you have, again, one of these adolescents, a teenager who's going through these changes and has all these hormones. Maybe you have even some poltergeist activity. If they are constantly focusing on Slender Man, the boogeyman, are we breathing life into these things by circulating these stories and telling these stories over and over and over again in our history as a people, as a society, as a species? How much here is really real? How much of it is just our own, the power of our own imaginations? And again, I know that sounds far out or whatever, but that's what we do on this channel, so let's go a little deeper. So it says, through sustained imagination, repeatedly interacting with a detailed imaginary friend, muse, or personality in your mind can lead it to develop its own sentience. Which I'm like, how does that happen? Like, it gets its own awareness. That's curious to me. I don't know if I believe that. And independence, effectively becoming a tulpa. And again, please keep that in mind. Just because I'm reading something or reading from something and we're looking at things doesn't mean I believe it, right? And you shouldn't either. Do your own research. Do your due diligence, please. Talking to the void. The process of consistently interacting with a mental presence until it starts responding back is a common way this happens, as described in this Reddit thread. Again, that's something that teenagers, the emo kids, depressed teenagers, satanic panic, that type of stuff. At that age, right, your synapses are firing all over the place. And so is that creating things to happen? So egregores, the group or collective, this is what we would be looking for in reference to today's current events. Are they getting us to focus on biblical terminology and biblical times, or aliens? Are they getting us to focus on aliens so that they happen. Some of the UFOs, they say, are people just wanting it to happen so badly, and they have so much excess energy maybe, that there it is. Just like when Christ in the Bible, he would you could only be healed if you had faith. It wasn't even so much about him, he was just the instrument. But if you had the faith, then yes, you could be healed. It's the same thing. If you believe that your thoughts are that strong, then perhaps these things can happen. So it says egregores, for a group, shared belief, when many people focus intense thought, belief, or energy on a concept, a symbol, or a fictional character, and it says right here, like Slender Man, it can coalesce into an autonomous psychic entity. Cultural phenomena. These aren't always created by occultists. They can emerge from shared cultural ideas, becoming powerful thought forms through collective consciousness. So again, urban legends, just like in the Freddy story way back in my time. Are we breathing life into these fictional characters? And or are some of these authors and writers of today modern day prophets, like Dean Koontz with the CV when that happened? So it says, the stronger and more sustained the mental energy directed towards the entity, the more likely it is to form, whether you want it to or not. Autonomy. The defining feature is the entity gaining a life of its own, separate from the creator's conscious control. Now, and if we think about it, really, like, what are each one of us? We are a thought of the creator, really. He thinks, he speaks, therefore we are, we exist. So, it's kind of, again, we have that Fibonacci, we have that pattern echoing out, the butterfly effect. So now we're going to go ahead and take a little deeper look, and I will reference all of this in the description box once the video is done. So this is from that older site, and it's really kind of cheeky looking, but it's fun. And there's a little more information in this link than there was in when we did the previous video. Where's he, Emma? I don't know what that says. Where's He-Man then? I've tried manifesting. I know, and that, again, not everyone can do that. Not everyone has the same mental energy or the same energy here. You have to touch base with your spirit too. You really have to clean out your temple to get started, like kick started. You and people don't want to hear this. And I'm not a doctor. This isn't medical advice. This is what I did, my personal testimony. I emptied myself out. I fasted like crazy for like all of 2019, 2020, all the time. That's why, like, I've gotten skinnier and fatter and skinnier and fatter, but it builds discipline in you, and it actually resets your body. But you have to do it for at least 72 hours. 3 days is the magic number. And again, always talk to your chosen professional and or expert before doing anything like that. I figure my words are, it's my body. If I can't do what I want with it, like, then where are we and what's going on here? So we're going to read a little bit about the person who first coined the term thought form, I believe. But she did bring it over. She went over into Tibet. So it says 1929, Alexandra David Neal in the Tulpas of Tibet. In 1920, and we've read a little bit of this, but this has some more information. A Belgian French woman living in Tibet added a new word to the global dictionary of paranormal terms, tulpa. But I get ahead of myself. In Tibet, the most common religion is a form of Buddhism particular to that country. And what was to later be called a tulpa starts with a concept from this unique Tibetan Buddhism. Worldwide, it's not an unusual belief that deities, divine messengers, and divinely gifted people possess the ability to either create a human body, in the case of deities and divine messengers, or to create a duplicate human body, in the case of divinely gifted people, a situation I will refer to as a temporary human for now. Let's pause there for a second. I know this gets a little weird, and I know it's very fringe, but again, there are people who believe in these things. There are authors and people who make millions of dollars and have conferences talking about metaphysical, spiritual things. And people in high places believe in these things. And some of them have been proven out and been proven to be true. So, you know, what's really sad too is you can always tell, especially in the comment section, us Americans, like, we make ourselves look bad by the way we speak and how we treat each other. It's just like, feels like the internet sometimes, comment sections recently are just like playgrounds, and there's bullies everywhere. What is cool or okay or entertaining about picking on a grown woman? I don't understand that, and I never will. These people over, you know, in Tibet, these are belief systems that they have carried through generation and generation and generation through oral practices, most of the time. This is why they stay pure, is because that person, and a lot of people don't understand this because they play that game with you in school and you think, oh, that's it, that telephone, how the message gets messed up and that's how rumors start and blah, blah, blah. But if you look at oral cultures where they orally pass down their stories and their creation stories, that person, that's all they do. They're a house or a container of wisdom and information for that tribe or that people. And so when that person is studying or apprenticing, their life basically is nothing but listening to these stories, taking them in, and then repeating them over and over and over again. So these are terms and these are practices that I think we should look at least with a little bit of respect, just like anybody's belief system, except for those who would go around harming people. Those belief systems should go away. So the reason for this ability is that spiritual beings sometimes need a body to interact with people who cannot normally perceive the spiritual. And again, I'm not agreeing with all this. We're talking about this person here. In the case of divinely gifted people, these temporary humans are always a duplicate of their creator, like a doppelganger, and they're used to communicate with other people who are a great distance away. Okay, so just like I said, if you've read any of the story of the saints by location, that sounds like they're talking about almost the same thing there. And I will try to find the commonalities and the thread of commonalities through the faith systems and belief systems throughout the cultures, because I believe that's where we are obviously connected, right? And that's where we'll find truth too. And when you... everything is wanting us to be divisive and divided right now, but if you look at everything, you know, as us being a team or us being connected, things take on a different tone, because now you're not in competition. You don't want that person to lose because they're right beside you. If they lose, you lose, right? Because you're beside them. It's kind of, you know, it's wanting success for that person as well. So anyway, here we go. And now ignore everywhere else but Tibet. In Tibetan Buddhism, this ability to create temporary humans has a distinct name and is called Spurlpa in the Tibetan language, a term that has been translated in the past to have various related meanings. As a verb, quote, to make phantoms, end quote, or a noun for, quote, illusionary man, end quote, for example, like a boogeyman. Or an imaginary friend. As far as foreigners, Drop Dead Fred was about the imaginary friend. If you've ever seen it, oh my gosh, it's so funny. It used to be a favorite of mine when I was a kid. That's the same idea, that these beings are given life through our collective belief in them. Sit and think about that for a while, right? Okay. The Spurlpa is, I think I said that right. As far as foreigners interested in Tibet goes, this was a word that was unique to the country and specifically only appeared in religious contexts, in stories about human interactions with deities or divine messengers, and in stories about greatly devout practitioners, and all mostly spoken of in the past tense. So basically what they're saying there is this word, this practice, this concept is only spoken of in religious circles and religious texts. Like it's not something that it's something, I guess, that they treat sacredly and with respect, right?
Interesting. And this is when Alexandra David Neal, the Belgian-French woman I mentioned above, added a new spin to this idea. David Neal had developed an interest in the Buddhist beliefs of Tibet while studying foreign and paranormal matters in England, Spain, and Switzerland as a young woman. She eventually took a short trip to Tibet in 1911, right before the Spanish flu, that was 1912, and didn't leave the country until 1925. Yeah, there was probably chaos and pandemonium, by which time she'd learned quite a bit about the culture and beliefs of the Tibetans. In 1929, she published a book in French about both, and now this is in 1929, mind you. I get grown men trying to bully me about the topics that I cover, and this is a woman who wrote a book about it in 1929 and grew in success because of it. That's a pretty epic feat, especially in that time for a woman. Wisdom is Mind says, temporary body, the souls go from body to body, used by Maharishi, Saint Hinduism, Buddhism is child of Hinduism. I actually looked up a couple of the things that you said, and I found conflicting information. They're both religions. They're both belief systems. So, they vary. I forget where they vary. I just read it like yesterday because of some of the posts that you have made or whatever. Well, anybody can say anything on the internet, so I always check everything that people tell me. I don't just blindly believe what they say. But thanks for being here. Okay, so David Neal developed an interest in the beliefs while she was in Tibet. In 2009, she published a book. It was called Mystiques et Magiciens du Tibet. Mysteries of the Magicians. Oh, magic and mysticism in Tibet. I see. Magic. There it is, Mystique. Okay. The book sold extremely well. See that, guys? And it is in this book that David Neal introduced her ideas regarding the tulpa. See what I mean? Everybody cracks on me. I'm just some woman looking into these things because I want to have a good ever afterlife or whatever, next life, whatever it is. And I want to do better than I have in the past, and I want to mend my ways. And I hope the people that find the channel are spiritually mature enough to want to move forward, especially since this is such a time of transition. I hope most of us are learning and wanting to move forward at this time, not quite as divided as our leaders would want us to be. So moving on. First off, the name David Neal only mentions in a footnote. Tulpa was normally spelt sprula, and it meant magic illusory creature. So in theory, she changed the spelling to closer match the actual pronunciation of the word. Okay. In practice, I suspect she changed the spelling so that it would be unique of her to use it. Oh, I see, for actual spell making and spell writing. I suspect this because the very next, and that's the thing, like she had been there and she learned about it, but she took a piece of that religion and it sounds like she's blending it with other things. I think that's what it is. One of them renounces materialism. I think that's what I read. That's one of the differences in them. And their belief in the deities, or lack thereof, like, I forget. I'll have to read it again. I'm sorry. I have not learned a whole lot about Buddhism, but again, I'm looking into it because I know people who are in high places believe in it. And, it's important to know thy enemy. Okay. Here we go. In practice, she changed it for her spell working. He suspected this because the very next thing she does in her book is gives examples of tulpas she had encountered, meaning she created. Her tales present a somewhat different idea of both what a spiralpa was and how they were created and worked. Tulpa, spiralpa, I don't know. Neither one of them sounds like that. That's weird. As David Neal explained it, is a sort of illusion created by spiritual energy. It can look like anything, and it can be mistaken for being real. In extreme cases, these illusions can be solid and, if of a living being, can take on a life of their own and possibly outlive their creator. That's wild. Okay, so this is Neal speaking. This is what she is expanding upon the idea. Tulpas are created either by a spiritual entity or by a human who can properly envision the object they wish to represent as if it was real to begin with. Though her own 4 examples of tulpas she encountered tell a different story about the matter. Interesting. Now, I'm going to try and see if we read this, because I don't know if we had read this part. We'll read this one. Divine visit. David Neal, and now this is where she's explaining things, I guess, that she encountered. David Neal was visited one day by a painter she knew, a man who specialized in images of wrathful deities with whom he was fascinated. On this particular day, as he approached her, she could see that he was closely followed by the somewhat nebulous figure of one of these frightful deities, one of the things that he was focused on and painting, one of his subjects. And she saw one of them following him. So, not understanding why she looked startled, the painter stepped toward her to ask her what was wrong. The figure did not follow him, but stayed in the place where it had first been seen. David Neal says she pushed past the painter and reached out to touch the strange figure. And I quote, "I felt as if touching a soft object whose substance gave way under the slight push, and the vision vanished." So like she touched it, and like a bubble, he just poof. When questioned, the painter admitted to performing rituals to try and summon the deity prior to producing a painting of the being. That very day, he spent the whole morning on the painting. So it seemed that either the deity heard him and manifested a misty tulpa, or that the man's own obsession with the figure created a spiritual double that was following him. I kept saying I wanted a black and white dog, I wanted a black and white dog, I wanted a black and white dog, and then came Sam. I mean, you know, you think you can, you think you can, you think you can, and you do. People do amazing things all the time. Why not extend that to our mind, right, and our words? So here's another story where she allegedly encountered one of these things. David Neal had befriended a lama called Rinpoche. We're just going to say that. And it was not unusual for him to show up at her camp to chat. One day, David Neal's cook asked for some provisions that were stored in her tent, so they both walked towards her tent to get them. The two of them saw that Lama Rinpoche was sitting in a folding chair at David Neal's camp table near her tent, and the cook, therefore, said he would retrieve the provisions later, for he should make tea for the visiting Lama first. As the cook headed back to the kitchen, David Neal walked over to greet the Lama, looking at him as she approached. But just a few steps from the tent, a strange thing occurred. David Neal described it as if a flimsy veil of mist seemed to open before it, like a curtain that is slowly pulled aside, and Lama Rinpoche was gone instantly. That would probably be an example of something on his end. Think about it. If he's allegedly a lama, he's meditating all the time, he's fasting all the time, he's, doing all these spiritual things all the time. He would be the one to bilocate or create a thought form to go and visit her, maybe to offer prayer or something like that. Rule 1, life is suffering. First step to enlightenment. Look up the laws of Buddhism. I actually did. Their goal, though, is to eliminate suffering. That's the goal, and they say that we create our own suffering is what they say, which I don't always agree with that. Happy Saturday. Hi, thanks for being here, guys. I appreciate your company. This won't go too much longer, but I want to touch base on a couple of these things that I found. So just we'll read one more. Should we read another encounter, or hang on, because we read that. Egregores. I wanted to read you guys this. It's a question from Q Aura. If you've ever been on there, you can find some really cool stuff in there if you search. It is different than Facebook or Instagram. You can have more privacy. You're not uploading pictures and all that. But it's a lot of groups, and a lot of it is very like-minded, right? You can find a lot of groups with people and obscure things that maybe you won't find everywhere. I call it kind of an adult Reddit almost. I hope that makes sense. Life is suffering, but it's not just suffering, right? You can't know joy if you haven't suffered. You can't know what real love is when it comes along if you haven't felt the pain of disregard, right? So we all go through a lot of the same cycles in life, just at different times. in our life, in our walks. That's what I found at this point. Okay, so this is on the Quora site. And the question that was posed, because you can post this is really cool too. You can post a question, and anyone that wants to, that sees it, can answer it. And so, let's see. What I found funny about this is I haven't been on Quora in months, but I did this search and this came up. And this person is a writer at the High Strange magazine from 2021 to the present. I'll just be real blunt here. I created that term like 5 years ago. I started saying it and named my channel that when I left my main channel because I was getting bullied and followed and all this weird things. Watch what they do to some YouTubers that they don't want up here, especially women. A lot of them will leave. A lot of them have been stalked. Some bigger YouTube women have gone missing in the past. Like it gets bad. It's definitely a boys' club here on this platform. Pain of disregard is the best last quote of 2025. Yeah, it is painful, I think. I mean, I don't know if you're being funny, but I'd rather have somebody hate me than just like totally disregard my presence, right? Because like to hate me, that takes a lot of energy. Like maybe there's a chance we can work things out. If you have that much energy towards me, maybe, you know, eventually things can work out between us. Okay, so this is the question that was posted. Egregores. How many ghosts have we created? It says most of the world, and this is a post she made, most of the world is unconscious of the fact that they live in a world of phantasmagoria. Now, if you've ever seen, for example, the movie Phantasm, that's also kind of like this. The boogeyman in that movie, he creates like these zombie things. And then by the end of the series, he had died, but this other guy had created the whole place all over again in his mind. It gets really deep that way. But anyway, can you imagine that? Can you sit back and let's think of that in like the most dramatic way possible, like in the most shocking way. Like what if suddenly like half of the people and half of the buildings just disappeared because the person who imagined them passed away or you know, left this side of the veil or whatever. Or the belief, they just stop believing. And that's, you know, a good example is our system. People have lost faith in the system. They no longer have faith in it, meaning they don't believe in it. And the fact that they don't believe in it, it looks more fake and less real every single day. So do you see the power of the mind, how it really can give a life to it, what is supposed to be something inanimate? Interesting. Okay, so most of the world is unconscious of the fact that they live in a world of phantasmagoria. Alexandra David Neal, one of the earliest mentions of egregores, also known as thought forms or tulpas, is in the Book of Enoch. Not included in the original canon, blah, blah, blah. In the Book of Enoch, egregores are referred to as the watchers. This, I think, is wild. Because if we're talking about these things being thought forms, either the words being used differently in the Book of Enoch, or they're saying we've created them with our own. And I do believe that can happen, like through naming things like Slenderman. That thing took on a life of its own with the generation and online. It just, and that's what ends up happening with Twin Peaks. Is so many people believe in it. That I think this other world was created, but we'll talk more about that because this is an ongoing topic, you know, that we discuss here is reality and what's going on here and what's happening here. So it says, the watchers, angelic beings of good or evil intent, depending on whom you ask. It is agreed that these beings, after being fed, meaning over and over with our attention, can and will turn on their creator if threatened with extinction. Now, this person said that in regard to the watchers. Jean Dubois, the 20th century French alchemist, defined the term egregore as the psychic and astral entity of a group. And yes, these beings are real and created, in this case, by us. So the question arises, how many ghosts have we created that are here, you know, that are here? How many, just like when, like I said, with the Ouija boards or when the ghost hunt's happening. They're all excited. Their energy's up, right? They turn out the lights, so there is no circuit there. They are the only circuits for this energy and their devices. And then their devices start getting the batteries sucked. The devices that they're holding. So again, are we creating this paranormal stuff ourselves through our collective fear or belief or what have you? I hope that makes sense. To be honest, Sonic.exe might have had a better run than Slender Man. I'll have to check into that. Religion is not just for men. True story. Okay, now moving on. Egregores are also mentioned in the writings of Tibetan Buddhists using the term tulpas or tulku. A tulpa in Tibetan mysticism is a, quote, being or object which is created through willpower, visualization, attention and focus, concerted intentionality, and ritual, meaning a repeated thing over and over, just like the rituals to call upon these beings. Again, we named them. We asked them for a name. A name comes into our head. This is why they tell you not to name your guardian angel. Are we just feeding these things and giving them life by talking about them and focusing on them? Sonic EXE has been around for almost, if not as long as Slender Man. It's grown more popular. Slender Man fell off a while ago. Yeah, but there's some stuff in the story, the actual background of that's related to events today. There's a lot of stuff taking place today that is related to World War II, Germany, and the scientists that were brought over here to America after all that happened. Yes, we are. Focus and attention is energy. Exactly. Hidden America channel explains them pretty well. That's cool. That, like I said, this is a new topic for me almost altogether. I'm so like bummy. I got my dad's shirt on, like missing my dad. It's near the holidays. That's interesting. Okay, so let's go to the next part. Hence the term egregore, they just said pronounced egregore. There it is. Also commonly used in Hermetic traditions, became associated with beings created by a group of magical practitioners. But how do they create such a creature? Like I said, the golems or the orcs in Lord of the Rings, same type of idea there. By putting so much psychic energy into an allegedly haunted place or whatever, especially a place where many ghost hunting groups have been, an egregore or thought form is fed and becomes a, quote, autonomous psychic entity composed of and influencing the thoughts of a group of people, end quote. Before you poo-poo the idea out of hand, let me put it into perspective with a real-world example. In Season 5, Episode 2 of Kindred Spirits paranormal television show with Amy Bruni and Adam Berry, this is actually a good reference, with Psychic Chip Coffee, I've watched them before, an issue was raised that concerns all ghost hunters. And this is what I'm talking about. While investigating the historic Oliver House in Massachusetts after being called to the residence by the owner, Bruni was struck by an idea. Because the current owner mentioned that a ghost dubbed Zombie Boy had only recently appeared during the ghost hunts, Bruni wondered where he'd come from. Because Bruni understood the concept of egregore, she was startled when she realized that Zombie Boy might be an egregore because, to test the theory, Bruni suggested a plan to validate if or if not the idea that an egregore might be the cause of this new haunting. She and Barry would create a whole fictional profile. So they're giving life to him. They're feeding it, right? They're going to make up a whole story, a whole backstory for this alleged zombie boy because the owner already named him. But they go outside, right? Because they don't want this egregore to hear them in case it's, whatever's going on there. So they go outside to create this whole background for this boy. But they left Chip out of it. They didn't tell him. And later during the investigation, I'm just kind of summarizing it for you because it's long. Later during the investigation, that's what came to him, was the backstory that they gave him. So they said, this is a major problem, Bruni said. It's a problem that all ghost hunters should be aware of. If repeated ghost hunting expeditions can create a form of consciousness imbued with sentience and the ability to act on the environment in a literal way, the question arises, how many of our ghosts have been created by us? There are a few really good ARGs made by the younger kids, or the young people, young bloods, that are really good in explaining this. I think the Mandela has egregores in it, if I'm not mistaken. The Mandela ARG, and it's actually a really good story. Are you Carolyn? Okay, let me keep going. Multiple groups have investigated a location over a period of time. Are they creating beings with an agenda of their own precisely because of the energy and thought put into them? Yes, it's certainly a problem when you consider how many locations are repeatedly investigated by numerous groups over a period of years. The Borden House, Alcatraz, insane asylums. Are many of these haunts actually created beings rather than true ghosts? To be sure, I've done enough investigating on my own and even been run off a couple of sites to which my knowledge had never before been investigated to know if the ghosts are real. The question posed by this thought experiment is how many of those phenomena are actually creations of our own imagination? And just as important, how would we know? What I do know is that in the future, I will attempt to focus on haunts where few other investigators have gone. Though it is possible for one person to create an egregore, I seriously doubt that my rather boring imagination would be enough to create such a being. And that is the end of that. Who's the old man standing behind you? Oh, stop. There's no old man behind me. I have a picture right there. It's an angel. It's not old man. I don't know what that means. I don't know who that is. Okay, so my question, again, this kind of goes along with are we creating certain situations and scenarios over and over again by focusing on them? Are we doing it? Because I never thought before, okay, if people don't like Jesus and they don't like the Bible, why is mainstream media pushing it now? Because they're pushing Armageddon. See, everybody has kind of like the people in control. It's an anti-human agenda. If I believed in aliens, I would blame aliens. I even heard Megyn Kelly in a clip say how much she liked Mrs. Kirk, but why don't we just get rid of all the other humans? We don't need them anymore. Okay, you're not human, but she does look a lot different since she changed her like political leanings. Again, it's strange, these people. I don't know if they've got new bodies and so they're on board like with whatever's going on, or they earned their immortality. I don't know. But we are in some strange times, and the more we know, the more we can equip ourselves in our minds. I tell you, the isolation and solitude has really made my mind strong, and this is why I avoid certain topics now. I was going to go over some of the fallen with you guys and even give you their names and their attributes so you could defend yourself, but I'm like, that's too much awareness. I don't think that's a good idea to focus on them that much in that way. So I'm not going to do that exact thing now. I'm not going to do that video. Okay. So now we're going back to David Neal. Having seen tulpas and learned theoretically how they were made, she decided to try and create one herself, and she isolated herself because here's the thing. The more isolated and secluded that you are, the stronger your mind becomes because you live in your mind. You spend so much time daydreaming, reminiscing, thinking about your to-do list, whatever. Especially if you're isolated and you shut down your devices, your mind will become very strong. It's kind of like if you wear a blindfold around your house, because you're shutting off your eyes, your ears start working better. I hope that makes sense. Anyways, moving on. So she tries to, as the object of her experiment, she decided to envision a short, fat monk, an innocent and jolly type of person. The initial part of her experiment took a few months and consisted of her creating a living image in her mind of the monk, complete to every detail. So it's kind of like how authors create a character, for example. She practiced imagining him over and over and over again, doing things that a regular person would do. And her idea of him became both fixed and lifelike. This monk was essentially a guest that shared the apartment she was staying in while performing this stage of the test. At this point, David Neal ended her seclusion and gathered her servants and tents to resume her tour of the country. To her perception, the illusion of the monk persisted, and he appeared to include himself in the group as they traveled, often seen by her performing actions that would be natural to travelers. David Neal no longer needed to actively think about the monk for him to be seen and take action now, and stranger still, she could now occasionally feel the monk. His robe sometimes rubbed past her, and on one occasion, she thought she felt his hand on her shoulder. A little more alarmingly, as the illusion started to act on its own and become more than just visual, the feature she had initially envisioned for the monk also started to change. He became leaner and meaner looking, and he started to be, quote, more troublesome and bold. She was losing control of her imaginary friend. Can I apologize for my ancestors' wrong actions? Get out of here. Get out of here. I don't stand for any kind of racism or prejudice, no matter who it's against. Go on. And it wasn't my ancestors. You better check yourself and know something. Okay. So this thing that she created with her mind, I'm sorry, my allergies are starting to get me. We got a real tree and I got this little dog I'm allergic to. Okay, so she's having all these incidents and she goes to get rid of him. She needed to end the experiment because he was becoming naughty and mischievous, kind of like Drop Dead Fred, that movie I mentioned. She had to concentrate to dissolve him to end her own built-up belief in his existence. It took 6 months for her to fully get rid of this imaginary thing that she brought to life. That is wild. Reparations. I need reparations. Who are you talking to? Learn who you're talking to. Seriously. You better just be careful. You can't just go saying that to everybody. Why? Because I look white? Go on, man. My grandparents were immigrants. Go away. Okay, Tulpas and the Paranormal. The book about her time in Tibet sold very well across Europe and America, and as a result, her stories about tulpas became very well known. See, this is a risk too. Her book is becoming so well known. There's so much awareness about these things now that perhaps maybe they're easier to create for people because now they're aware that it's a possibility. Do you see what I mean about awareness not always being a good thing? That we shouldn't broadcast everything out there because certain things, you don't want to perpetuate them, right? And you can give life to a story or an event or even a thing or a person who's maybe no longer with us or a fictitious character. And you can bring that to life just through, right, that focused energy. So again, I would ask, is that what the media is doing when they are giving us Bible verses and telling us it's Armageddon and the end of the world, and all these people who are allegedly converting that, no offense, don't seem like they'd be the type to convert? Like, what's going... I'm sorry, it makes me suspicious, and I want to ask questions. I think we should always ask questions. And the second they told us to stop asking questions, we should have been very suspicious and refused to go any further, refused to cooperate with the system, refused to prop it up until they have, transparency with us. Anyways, so now we know that there have been tests and studies on these things. We also know that she created her own and even saw other people's tulpas, which is bizarre. Now, David Lynch, going back to him, we have the Black Lodge, the White Lodge, and then we have the little person who is, I think he's the devil or a demon. And the question is, was all of that perpetuated by them? Was the doppelganger that was in the show, was it a thought form of Agent Cooper? Did he create it? And so we have a really good article here about his stories. And I'm seeing again that his stories are all connected in these bizarre ways. There's something more than typecasting happening here. And I've said that in my last several videos. People aren't going to believe me. People are still going to call me crazy. But I think in some type of way, we're watching certain people's real lives. And it's just like The Simpsons, right? They show us all the time. The Simpsons sitting there doing their daily life and the aliens watching them on their TV. I believe there's something like that happening to some of us because the clues are just everywhere. But anyways, for right now, I'm going to go because this video has been an hour long. Let me tell you what I found for anyone that's interested. I found a book, an old book, a text online because of the month we are in. This is called... Geez, can I have the title? The History of the Blessed Virgin Mary and the History of the Likeness of Christ, which the Jews of Tiberias made to mock at, the Syriac texts. It's big. It's a big honking book. I won't read the whole thing to y'all, But it does talk about Mother Mary, about the angel that told her mother that she was coming. And it has stories about her family and their heritage and how they got to where they got and how they, you know, got to having Jesus. Too long a title. Absolutely. Okay. Stop it now. That's ignorant. Just stop it. What are you, 5? Well, I was told by our devils I've been talking to Hebrew Israelites. Yeah, I wouldn't talk. That's a rough cult, man. They're based on hate and war. When Christ comes back, he's gonna come back. People still don't understand what that means. You have to go back to the original verse where the word sword is used. The sword of the Spirit is the tongue. It is the word of truth. He divides people just by speaking truth because most people don't want to hear the truth. He doesn't even try to divide people. It just happens, like has happened to most of us. Why most of us are estranged and kind of lonely this time of year. I'm going to do a video about specifically Gen X and estrangement and being lonely during the holidays. So if anyone is interested in that as well, just watch for it. Thank you so much for being here, guys, and keeping me company. I do boot you if you're outright hateful or racist or any of those things. I just get rid of you. You know, why waste your time in a place you don't want to be, you know? So you guys have a great evening. I hope that you're blessed. Stay warm. And I hope that you have enough of whatever it is that you need this holiday season. Bye, guys. Thanks so much for being here. I hope this was interesting for y'all.